Greetings, lore seekers. Welcome back to the Lorelord, where we dive deep into the universes that captivate our imaginations. Today we're tackling perhaps the most contentious question in all of Warhammer 40,000. If the eternal stalemate were to finally break, if the grim darkness were to reach its ultimate conclusion, who would actually win? Join the Lorelord's inner circle and unlock exclusive content that goes beyond the surface. Members get custom lore videos on topics you choose, exclusive YouTube shorts with forbidden knowledge, theory breakdown videos featuring your wildest submissions, and showcases of your homebrew creations and fan content. Ready to dive deeper into the mysteries that casual fans will never discover? Hit that join button and become part of the inner sanctum where true lore masters gather. For over 35 years, the 41st millennium has been locked in perpetual conflict, with each faction possessing enough power to threaten the galaxy, but never quite enough to claim ultimate victory. But what if we removed the narrative constraints? What if we analyzed each faction's true capabilities, their ultimate goals, and their paths to total domination? Today, we'll examine every major power in the galaxy, from the crumbling Imperium to the all-consuming Tyranids, from the ancient Necrons to the chaotic forces of the warp itself. We'll analyze their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their realistic chances of achieving total galactic supremacy. By the end of this analysis, we'll crown the most likely victor in the ultimate war for the galaxy, and the answer might surprise you. The Imperium of Man, the dying Titan. The case for imperial victory. Let's begin with humanity's sprawling empire, the Imperium of Man. On paper, the Imperium's case for victory seems compelling. They control roughly 1 million worlds, possess the largest military force in the galaxy, and have survived for 10,000 years despite facing every conceivable threat. The Imperium's greatest strength lies in its sheer scale and adaptability. Where other factions are limited by biology, technology, or ideology, humans have proven capable of surviving in any environment and adopting any strategy necessary for survival. From the fanatical courage of the Astra Militarum to the superhuman might of the Space Marines, from the industrial might of Forge worlds to the psychic potential of sanctioned psychers, the Imperium has tools for every situation. Their technology, while often misunderstood as primitive, is actually incredibly advanced when properly maintained. A single Imperial battleship can crack continents, while their Titan legions can level entire cities. The sheer industrial capacity required to supply a 1 million world empire is staggering, and when fully mobilized, the Imperium can produce war materials on a scale that dwarfs any other faction. Most importantly, the Imperium has already survived scenarios that should have destroyed it completely. The Horus Heresy, the Age of Apostasy, the 13th Black Crusade, the opening of the Great Rift. Each crisis that should have been the end instead became another chapter in humanity's survival story. The imperial path to victory. For the Imperium to achieve ultimate victory, they would need to overcome their greatest weakness, themselves. If they could somehow resolve their internal contradictions, reuniting with lost technology, purging the inefficiencies of their bureaucracy, and uniting their fractured military commands, they possess the raw resources to overwhelm any other faction. The return of Robot Guilliman represents the beginning of such a renaissance. His administrative genius is already streamlining imperial governance, while his strategic acumen is revolutionizing military doctrine. Lionel Johnson is the second step. If other loyal Primarchs return, if the Emperor were somehow restored to active leadership, if the Imperium could reclaim its Dark Age technology, they could transition from mere survival to galactic reconquest. Why the Imperium won't win. However, the Imperium's greatest strength is also its fatal weakness. The very scale that makes them powerful also makes them ungovernable. 1,000,000 worlds cannot be efficiently administered across galactic distances, especially when faster-than-light communication is unreliable and dangerous. More critically, the Imperium is ideologically incapable of the total victory they claim to seek. Their entire society is built around the concept of eternal war against existential threats. Without enemies to fight, the Imperium would likely collapse from internal contradictions. They need their enemies almost as much as their enemies need them. The Imperium is not trying to win the war, they're trying to survive it. And survival, while admirable, is not victory. The Chaos Gods, the infinite hunger, the case for chaos victory. If any faction has a legitimate claim to inevitable victory, it's the forces of chaos. The Dark Gods are not merely powerful entities, they are fundamental aspects of conscious experience itself. As long as sentient beings feel rage, despair, hope, or pleasure, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh will continue to exist and grow stronger. Chaos has already achieved a form of victory that no other faction can claim. They are immortal. Empires fall, species go extinct, stars burn out. But the Chaos Gods will endure as long as consciousness exists in the universe. They have turned humanity's greatest achievement, the psychic awakening of their species, into their own weapon. The opening of the Great Rift demonstrates Chaos's ultimate strategic advantage. They can literally reshape reality itself, turning the laws of physics into mere suggestions. Where other factions must work within the constraints of space and time, Chaos can ignore those limitations entirely. Every victory achieved by any other faction ultimately serves Chaos. Imperial soldiers who feel pride in victory feed Slaanesh. Orc warriors who revel in violence strengthen Khorne. Tau who hope for a better future empower Tzeentch. Even the emotionless Necrons, by causing fear and despair in their enemies, serve the Dark Gods. The Chaos path to victory. Chaos doesn't need to conquer the galaxy in the traditional sense. They need to corrupt it. Every daemon summoned, every world consumed by warp storms, every mind driven to madness represents progress toward their ultimate goal, the complete merger of real space and the warp. If Chaos could somehow achieve perfect unity, if the four gods could overcome their eternal rivalry and work in true concert, they could accelerate this process exponentially. The galaxy would become a realm of infinite possibility, where thought becomes reality, and the Dark Gods reign supreme over a universe of endless war, eternal decay, constant change, and perfect excess. Why Chaos won't win. Paradoxically, Chaos's greatest strength is also their fundamental weakness. They are aspects of consciousness, not its masters. They can influence and corrupt, but they cannot exist without the very beings they seek to dominate. Total victory for Chaos would mean the destruction of ordered reality, but without ordered reality, there would be no consciousness left to worship them. More practically, the Chaos Gods are incapable of the cooperation necessary for total victory. Their eternal rivalry is not a flaw in their strategy. It is their fundamental nature. Khorne and Slaanesh will always oppose each other, as will Nurgle and Tzeentch. This internal division prevents them from achieving the unity necessary to completely overwhelm real space. Chaos can corrupt, they can destroy, but they cannot truly create or govern. They are parasites, not rulers, and parasites that kill their hosts ultimately destroy themselves. the Tyranids. The Great Devourer. The case for Tyranid victory. From a purely biological perspective, the Tyranids present the most terrifying case for ultimate victory. They are not a single species, but an entire ecosystem of perfectly adapted predators, capable of consuming and assimilating any form of life they encounter. The Tyranids' greatest advantage is their approach to warfare and evolution. Where other factions are limited by their existing technology and biology, Tyranids actively improve with every battle. They analyze enemy tactics, adapt to new threats, and incorporate useful genetic material from their prey. Each hive fleet that attacks the galaxy is more dangerous than the last. Their numbers are potentially infinite. The Tyranids we've seen so far represent merely the advanced scouts of a much larger force. Astronomical observations suggest that the main Tyranid force approaching the galaxy is so vast that it defies comprehension. We're not talking about billions or trillions of creatures. We're talking about numbers that render such distinctions meaningless. Most importantly, the Tyranids are the only faction with a truly achievable victory condition. Consume all biomass in the galaxy. They don't need to govern conquered territory or maintain complex ideologies. They simply need to eat everything, and they're very, very good at eating. The Tyranid path to victory. The Tyranid's strategy is elegantly simple. Arrive in overwhelming numbers. Adapt to whatever resistance they encounter. Consume all available biomass, and move on to the next target. Each world they devour makes them stronger, while each world they sterilize weakens potential enemies. If the main Tyranid force arrives as predicted, they would represent a threat unlike anything the galaxy has ever faced. Imagine millions of hive fleets arriving simultaneously from every direction, each one having evolved to counter specific galactic defenses. The sheer scale of such an invasion would overwhelm even coordinated galactic resistance. Why the Tyranids won't win? The Tyranids face one critical limitation. They are ultimately finite. Despite their vast numbers, they are still bound by the laws of biology and physics. Every creature they produce requires energy, and energy is not infinite. More problematically, the Tyranids' strategy of total consumption is self-defeating. If they succeed in devouring all biomass in the galaxy, they would face mass starvation. They would be forced to turn on themselves, with stronger hive fleets consuming weaker ones until only a single, greatly diminished force remained. The galaxy also contains threats that the Tyranids cannot simply consume and adapt to. The Necron's living metal technology, chaos corruption that can affect even Tyranid bioforms, and the Orc's fungal resilience all present challenges that pure biological adaptation cannot overcome. The Necrons, the undying dynasty. The case for Necron victory. If we're discussing ultimate victory, we must consider the faction that has already died once and returned stronger than ever. The Necrons possess several advantages that make them uniquely qualified for galactic dominance. First, they are effectively immortal. Necron warriors can be destroyed, but their consciousness is simply downloaded into new bodies. They cannot be corrupted by chaos, they cannot be consumed by Tyranids, and they do not suffer from the biological limitations that plague other factions. They have literally all the time in the universe. Second, their technology is so advanced that it appears magical to other races. They can manipulate matter at the atomic level, control the fundamental forces of the universe, and even affect the flow of time itself. A single Necron tomb world awakening has been known to cleanse entire sectors of enemy presence. Third, they have a clear and achievable victory condition. Restore the galaxy to the state it was in during their golden age, with the Necrons as its undisputed rulers. Unlike other factions with vague or contradictory goals, the Necrons know exactly what they want and have the patience to achieve it. The Necron path to victory. The Necron strategy is methodical and inexorable. Awaken slowly, analyze the current state of the galaxy, eliminate immediate threats, and gradually reclaim their ancient dominion. They don't need to rush because they cannot truly die. As more tomb worlds awaken and their technology is fully restored, the Necrons could systematically eliminate other factions with clinical efficiency. They have weapons that can extinguish stars, ships that can phase through solid matter, and constructs that can manipulate probability itself. If the Silent King succeeds in uniting the Necron dynasties, they would represent an unstoppable force of ancient technology and infinite patience, slowly but inevitably, reclaiming their rightful place as masters of the galaxy. Why the Necrons won't win. The Necrons face internal divisions that may prove insurmountable. The Great Sleep damaged many tomb worlds, and countless Necron lords have awakened with fractured personalities or conflicting agendas. Some seek to restore the old empire, others want to find new forms of existence, and still others have descended into complete madness. More fundamentally, the Necrons are trying to restore something that can never truly return. The galaxy they once ruled is gone, replaced by a universe full of life and possibility that they can never truly comprehend. They are masters of death, trying to rule a galaxy defined by life. The Orcs, the Green Tide, the case for Orc victory. The Orcs present perhaps the most underestimated case for galactic victory. Their apparent primitiveness masks several critical advantages that make them incredibly difficult to eliminate permanently. First, Orcs are the most numerous faction in the galaxy. They reproduce through spores, meaning that every world they visit becomes a potential breeding ground for future wars. Unlike other factions that require complex infrastructure to maintain their populations, Orcs can literally grow anywhere. Second, their Gestalt psychic field allows them to ignore many of the limitations that constrain other factions. If enough Orcs believe something works, it does work. This gives them a flexibility that more advanced races cannot match. Third, Orcs are the only faction that actively enjoys the current state of galactic warfare. Where other races see the eternal conflict as a burden to be endured or a problem to be solved, Orcs see it as the greatest entertainment imaginable. They are perfectly adapted to the 41st millennium. The Orc path to victory. For Orcs to achieve total victory, they would need the emergence of another Gazg-Kul-level leader capable of uniting the various clans into a single, galaxy-spanning war. If such a leader could maintain unity among the Orc clans long enough to systematically eliminate other factions, their sheer numbers and regenerative ability could prove overwhelming. The Orcs' victory would not be the calculated conquest of the Necrons or the systematic consumption of the Tyranids. It would be a green tide of violence that simply overwhelmed all opposition through sheer enthusiasm and numbers. Why the Orcs won't win? The Orcs' greatest strength is also their fatal weakness. They are incapable of the sustained coordination necessary for total galactic conquest. Orc society is built around constant internal conflict, and even the most successful war eventually fragments into smaller conflicts. More fundamentally, the Orcs don't actually want to win in the traditional sense. They want to fight. A galaxy without enemies to battle would be a boring place for Orcs, and boredom is the one thing Orc society cannot survive. The Tau Empire, the rising star, the case for Tau victory, The Tau represent the youngest major faction in the galaxy, but their rapid expansion and technological innovation make them a dark horse candidate for ultimate victory. Unlike other factions burdened by ancient grudges and rigid traditions, the Tau can adapt quickly to new threats and opportunities. Their philosophy of the greater good provides a unifying ideology that can potentially incorporate other species, making them the only faction actively seeking to create a truly multi-species galactic civilization. This flexibility could prove decisive in a universe where adaptation is often the key to survival. The Tau's technology continues to advance at an exponential rate. In the few thousand years since achieving interstellar flight, they have developed battlesuit technology, advanced AI, and weapon systems that can compete with much older civilizations. The Tau path to victory. The Tau's strategy relies on gradual expansion, technological advancement, and diplomatic incorporation of other species. If they could somehow survive long enough to fully develop their potential, they might represent the galaxy's best hope for a truly peaceful and prosperous future. Why the Tau won't win. The Tau face the simple problem of scale and time. They are too small and too young to compete with factions that control thousands of times more territory and have existed for millions of years longer. More critically, the Tau's idealistic worldview is poorly suited to the realities of the 41st millennium. Their belief in rational progress and diplomatic solutions is admirable, but it may be fundamentally incompatible with a universe where chaos corruption, Tyranid consumption, and orc enthusiasm for violence are basic facts of existence. The Eldar, the dying race. The case for Eldar victory. The Eldar, both craft-world and dark, possess several advantages that could theoretically lead to their dominance. Their psychic abilities are unmatched by any other faction. Their technology seamlessly blends the material and immaterial, and their understanding of the warp gives them strategic advantages that other races cannot match. The Eldar also have the benefit of foresight. Their Farseers can see potential futures and work to ensure the most favorable outcomes for their people. This strategic precognition could allow them to outmaneuver factions with greater raw power. Why the Eldar won't win. The Eldar face the insurmountable problem of their own declining numbers and fractured society. They are literally a dying race, with each loss being irreplaceable. Their path to victory would require them to somehow reverse millions of years of decline and unite their scattered factions, something they have been unable to accomplish despite facing extinction. The final analysis. The true victor. After examining each faction's strengths, weaknesses, and paths to victory, the question remains, who would actually win in a universe where narrative balance was not a consideration? The answer requires us to think beyond traditional concepts of military victory and consider what winning actually means in the context of Warhammer 40,000. The inevitable victor, chaos. Despite the compelling cases made for other factions, the ultimate victory belongs to chaos, but not in the way most people imagine. Chaos wins not through military conquest, but through entropy and inevitability. Every other faction contains the seeds of their own destruction, and chaos is simply the final state toward which all organized systems eventually tend. The Imperium will eventually collapse under the weight of its own contradictions, feeding despair to Nurgle and rage to Khorne. The Tyranids will consume themselves after devouring all available biomass, their final death throes creating a banquet of fear for the dark gods. The Necrons will achieve their perfect order, only to discover that perfection is indistinguishable from death, and death serves only chaos. Even the orcs, in their perfect adaptation to eternal warfare, serve the dark gods by generating endless violence and emotion. But here's the critical insight. Chaos's victory is also its defeat. The dark gods can only exist as reflections of consciousness and emotion. If they succeed in destroying all ordered civilization, they eliminate the very thing that gives them power. The final victory of chaos would be a universe of perfect entropy. No life, no consciousness, no emotion, and therefore no chaos gods. The real answer? The stalemate is the victory. The true genius of Warhammer 40,000 is not in any one faction's dominance, but in the perfect balance of mutual destruction that keeps them all locked in eternal conflict. Each faction is powerful enough to threaten all others, but weak enough that they can never achieve total victory. This stalemate is not a failure of the setting. It is the setting. The grim darkness of the far future is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be endured. In a universe where there is only war, war itself becomes the victor. The Imperium survives by constantly fighting. Chaos grows stronger through conflict. The Tyranids adapt through struggle. The Necrons awaken to eternal battle. The Orcs find perfect happiness in endless war. Even the dying Eldar find purpose in their struggle against extinction. None of them can win, because winning would end the war, and ending the war would destroy the very thing that defines them all. Conclusion: the beauty of eternal conflict. Fellow lore enthusiasts, the question of who would win Warhammer 40,000 reveals something profound about both the setting and ourselves. We ask who would win because we want resolution, closure, a final answer to the conflicts that define the universe we love. But the beauty of Warhammer 40,000 lies not in its resolution, but in its eternal tension. It is a universe where every faction has both the power to threaten the galaxy and the weaknesses that prevent them from dominating it completely. This perfect balance of mutual destruction creates a setting of infinite possibility, where every battle matters but no single victory can end the war. In the end, the real victor of Warhammer 40,000 is the war itself, eternal, inevitable, and ultimately beautiful in its terrible symmetry. Thank you for joining the Lorelord for this deep dive into one of the most hotly debated topics in Warhammer 40,000 lore. What do you think? Did I miss any crucial factors in my analysis? Which faction do you believe has the best chance at ultimate victory? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this comprehensive analysis, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the lore that shapes our favorite universes. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on all the latest content. And remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and that's exactly how we like it. This is the Lorelord, signing off. Keep seeking the lore, and remember, the Emperor protects, but knowledge protects better.